For too long I've been fearing the shadows and running from the wind and feeling like I'm bound to lose again. I wanna be strong, I wanna feel invincible. For once in my life, I wanna feel like the battle is winnable.
Hey everyone, I'm Mackayla. Welcome to the Soundtrack of Our Lives podcast. We're going to jump right in with the two hardest questions of all. Who are you and what have you been up to recently?
So, Mackayla, I'm a storyteller. That's what I am. And, I've written 2 books. I've written probably 600 songs. I've made now 7 albums, and 3 of those in the last 5 years, which was completely unexpected. I hope we'll get a chance to get into that because it was there was a period of like 18 years where I didn't go in a recording studio at all, but I wrote as if I planned to go in a studio pretty soon.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be fortuitous, and we'll get to that. But so what I've been up to recently is having some sort of weird renaissance in my old age, a musical renaissance, and it's really been a blessing. We discovered in the fall 8,200 miles, 21 states.
Wow.
Doing house concerts all over the eastern part of the U.S., Ohio, Illinois, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and doing some recording in Nashville on our way through all of that stuff. And so, it's I've already started writing some songs for the next album. What am I doing? And so it's exciting, and I'm very grateful for it, to be honest with you, because it's something I've always done. And people ask me sometimes on these podcasts, they'll say, how strategic of you, to make this happen. I'm like, no, I'm not that strategic.
Just kind of happened.
It just happened, right?
Yeah. So why did you go 18 years without releasing music?
Well, you know what? Because I didn't know what I was talking about. And so when I came home, I recorded an album in 2000 called Songs from My Window Seat. And I recorded it with a friend. We co-produced it.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a part of me, Mackayla, that thought, you know what? So, the album is a nice album, and I like the album. I even listen to it sometimes, and I go, well, that's pretty good, But there was a part of me that felt like, first of all, I'm not a producer really, and I'm not an arranger really. And so somewhere there is somebody who is both of those, or there are 2 people who can do that with this, and they can cause this music to go to a place that I couldn't imagine. I just felt like that was possible. And so I came home after we recorded this album in 2000, and I sat down on the couch with my wife and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go back in the studio again with me at the helm. I think I'm going to wait until I find this person. But, in the meantime, I'm going to continue to write, because I don't know how to turn that motor off, know? And so I did that. And then, in probably 2018, so 18 years later. And I didn't even go inside of a recording studio to hear somebody else's music during that time. That I just did not go in a studio. And so anyway, I came home and I said, I'm in my mid 60s now at that time. And I told my wife, I said, here's my worry. I said, my worry is that I'm going to die, and all of this music is going to be in a drawer somewhere, and nobody's going to know what to do with it, because they don't know. They'll just see it and they'll go, well, that's cool, but we don't know if it's good or bad or whatever. Right. And so anyway, I have a little prayer list that I pray through in the morning. It takes me about an hour. And so my wife said, "Hey, why don't you put something on there for yourself? Because you don't have anything on there for yourself. Why don't you ask for this person?"
Yeah.
Right. And so I did, and I put it on there. And so after 18 years, 3 months went by, and we were driving through Nashville, and we were having dinner with some friends. The husband had been the guitar player in Little River Band for 20 years.
Hmm.
And so he had toured the world. He was a one of those guys that, you've used the word genius. We hear that word all the time about people, but
Yeah.
I think this guy might actually be one. Certainly musically he is, and he can play anything, and he can do anything, and he hears stuff, right? So anyway, we're sitting at dinner. We were in the middle of a Mexican restaurant, and Rich and I, her husband, so the guy that's going to be my producer, I didn't know this.
Hmm.
We're sitting across the table from each other, and Susie, my wife, and Rich's wife and kids were down at that end of the table. And out of the blue, I mean, I never would have asked this guy to do anything. I knew who he was working with, and I'm like,
Hmm.
why would he work with I mean, I love the guy; he's my friend, but I would never ask him to work with me. I was just kind of loath to do that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so anyway, and so he asked me. He said, "Hey, man, what are you working on? Because I know you're always working on something." And I said, "Well, I've got a new song called 'Why Not Me' that Susie thinks is probably the most commercial thing I've ever done." And he said, "Really?" He goes, "What are you going to do with it?" And I said, "Well, that's kind of the $1 million question, Rich." I said, I don't know what to do with it."
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, why don't you sing it to me?" And I said, "Here in the restaurant?" I said, "We're right out in the middle. There's no hiding us, Rich. Are you sure?" And he said, "No, no, no, sing it to me. Sing it to me a cappella." And so I started singing, "There's a mountain wide and high, it reaches halfway to the sky." And I start singing it to him. And I get through the first verse and the chorus, and he holds his hand up, and he's emotional, and he stops me, and he said, "Okay, you can stop now." He goes, "First of all, Susie is right as usual." Okay. And he said, "Second of all, uh, I'm supposed to help you with this. Did you know this?" And I said, "Not till this very second." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Let me produce the demo on this because this is fabulous. I did not know you had this kind of material."
Hmm.
And he said, "So let me produce it." I said, "Well, do you want to get some hotshot, great singer, Nashville singer to sing on it or what?" And he goes, "No, no, I want you to sing on it." And so we record that song, and it was immediately, I mean, as soon as I got the mix back here, I sat right at this desk I'm sitting at right now, and I listened, and I was so emotional, I could hardly speak because I thought, this is already the best recording of my music that's ever been done. It's fabulous, right?
Hmm.
And so anyway, we do that song. Another guy in Nashville cuts it and makes sort of a hit out of it, actually. And and then he calls me back and he said, "What else have you got?" And I said, "Well, I've got this song about forgiveness. It's a love song about forgiveness called 'I Can't Remember.'
Hmm.
And it's kind of a Roy Orbison type of thing." And he goes, "Well, let me hear it." And so I sent it over to him, do it on my phone or whatever, and we cut that song. And when that song came back to me, it totally blew my wife's mind too. She's like, "Really, what is going on with you? Not this is the best work you've ever done."
Wow.
And so he called me and said, "Hey, Dennis, you know what? I didn't know you had this kind of material." And look, here's the lesson for me, and I think for all artists really, when it's quiet, and it should be discouraging,
Hmm.
uh, is the time you need to be working, doing your most work. You shouldn't wait for something to happen, because if I had waited until I sang to him in the restaurant to start writing,
Hmm.
when he came back to me and said, "Do you have enough material to do a whole album?" Which is what he said. He called me after I Can't Remember. We finished that recording. He called me. He said, "Dennis, I've been doing this for a long time, and I know when something great is happening." And he said, "You should make a record. Do you have enough songs to make a record?" Well, just think about how disappointing that would have been
Yeah.
if I had said, well, no, I was really waiting on something else to happen or somebody tell me I was okay or whatever. No, I had material. So we make a record and I submit it to the Grammys on a lark, and it makes it through some committee in the Grammys, and it makes the first Grammy ballot in 5 categories.
Wow.
And I'm 66 years old or whatever, right? And so we do that record. All that great stuff happens. Then we do another record in 20. So that was in 21. That album
Hmm.
was called "What Love Makes Us Do," and the second one in 23 is called "If I Live to Be 100," and I hope I do. And it also made the first Grammy ballot in 5 categories. And then the brand new record that's out now that I think I sent you the single on,
Yep.
the title track is "Strong,"
Hmm.
and uh, I'll tell you, I've never had this kind of reaction to my work. And I'll be 70 in January. So
That's pretty special.
it is special. It is special. You know what it means, Mackayla? It means never give up.
Yeah.
You should never give up. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean that nothing is happening.
Hmm.
And one of the things about art is creativity is that you're really in charge of what happens. If nobody's buying it and no record company's picking your music up or whatever, that's okay
Hmm.
because there's something you can do during that time,
Exactly.
and you can go in and do your best work. And anyway, it's very cool. I'm very humbled by it too. I don't understand it, but I'll take it. You know,
It was meant to be.
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How did you stay motivated to keep writing music through that, long period where you didn't record anything?
Mm, well, you know what? There's a saying out there that writers write, and you know, uh, people who have this, like my producer, he says, "I don't understand, man. Your motor is running all the time." And he has a friend that he produces as well, a bluegrass guy, and he said, his name is Mark Hauser. He passed away in July, and he said, Mark's motor is never off. And
Hmm.
he said, and yours is never off. And so, so what writers do, uh, we can talk ourselves out of it, by the way. We can say, "Oh, poor me," nobody loves me, or they don't really get my music, or I must really be special because nobody cares,
Hmm.
and I'm doing this by myself, and all this kind of stuff we tell ourselves, which may be true even, but that doesn't turn the switch off for writing. And so for me, I don't, I would never be able to do what writers in Nashville do because I tried it. I
Hmm.
lived in Georgia. Susie and I lived in Georgia for a while, and I would go back and forth to Nashville, and I would go meet in a writer's room with a couple of writers, and they say, "Okay, well, what do you want to write about?" "Well, I don't know. What do you want to write about?" That.
Hmm.
And I'm thankful there are people who can do it, and some of my best friends are hit songwriters in Nashville, and they can do it, but I can't. And so the things I write about are things I care about. And when I
Hmm.
care about something, I start hearing it, like the title track to this new record. So we thought we had the title track. We thought it was Relentlessly, which I love that song on this record, but it turned out it wasn't. I was wrong about that. And so one Sunday morning, I sat down at my piano, and I actually, in my soul, I heard this. Uh, for a man of faith and an optimist, you sure live a fearful life. And, you know, 99% of the things that you've worried about in your life have never happened to you, and they never will.
Hmm.
And so here's an idea. Why don't you stop living like that as best as you know how and write your manifesto? And so Strong came out of that, For too long, I've been fearing the shadows. That's the opening line. For too long, I've been fearing the shadows and running from the wind and feeling like I'm bound to lose again. Uh, I want to be strong. That's the chorus. I want to feel invincible. So that's how I write.
Hmm.
And I'm not able to just write because it's Tuesday. I write because things I care about. And so if you're an empath and you're feeling things all the time and you're seeing stuff around you, you know what you do. If you're a writer, you write about it. So
Yeah.
that's how it's not rocket science. It's just how you're wired. And that's
Hmm.
how I'm wired. So yeah.
How does your faith impact your music?
Well, you know, it impacts it in a very profound way
Hmm.
because uh, I read a thing Springsteen said a few years ago he was being interviewed by AARP magazine, and he opens the interview by saying, "I have kind of a weird job." He goes, "I go into a room and I make something out of nothing,
Hmm.
right?" And so the idea of ex nihilo, of from nothing something. So you're taking something out of nothing and you're making it into something beautiful. Well, that's what I think God does. And so it, uh, I feel like my mission, if I have one, uh, is to, I'll tell you this. I did a consulting hour with a lady in Nashville a few weeks ago, and she's a very sweet, clearly cares about songwriters,
Yeah.
knows everyone in Nashville. Everybody knows her and they trust her implicitly. And so anyway, I knew this and I checked her out with a couple of friends of mine. I said, "Hey, this gal, she's a real deal. So you'll be lucky. You'll be glad to have an hour with her." And so we did a session like this, and it was wonderful. It was worth every penny. Wasn't a lot of money, and it was worth every penny I paid for it. But at the end, she asked me, Mackayla, she said, uh, "Tell me your definition of success
Hmm.
before we go." And I said, "Well, first of all, I said, I want to say for people what they don't know how to say for themselves. Number two, I want to start as many uplifting and positive conversations as I can and helpful conversations. And the best ways that I know how to do that are music and books."
Hmm.
Okay. And I said, and then lastly, when I go into a room to do the work that feel like I'm called to do, I don't want to take any shortcuts. I said, I want to stay on something until it's perfect. And so that's all a reflection of what I believe. So
Yeah.
that's how it informs it. And that if that's strong enough in your fabric of your creativity, you can't settle for a B minus. You just can't, you
Yeah.
know. So I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. It sounds like it's very, part of your music and who you
It
are.
is. Absolutely it is. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, for somebody who's just getting started on their music career, what advice would you give them?
Well, the first thing I would say is through the years, especially when I toured a lot, and I'm back touring again, so maybe it's going to happen again. But I have people come to my record table or to sign things or books or merch or whatever, and they say, "I want to be a songwriter. I want to be a songwriter like you." Well, you know what I say to them? I never want to discourage anyone because I don't know what people are supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
That's their calling, and so far be it from me. I mean, I used to be the song doctor in Austin, and I had 25 people every Tuesday night around me, and they would play their songs, and I would have to say, man, that second line was fantastic because a lot of what I heard was terrible,
Hmm.
and but there were little uh, moments in there that were great, that were
Yeah.
terrific. It's like, okay, so I know you can do it, just the whole of it is not there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so so I think, you know, I think the first thing I would do is I would say that, you know, everybody's, you know, everybody can do at least one thing, Mackayla, better
Mm-hmm.
than 10,000 other people.
Yeah.
Everybody. And I mean everybody, the people who park your car, the guy on the park bench, they're all can do at least one. They're wired to do something fantastic. They probably don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say to somebody that is starting out is to say, look, you know what, try some stuff, you know, and the things that you don't know how to do, find a partner, find somebody who is an encourager, and you know, shed all of your naysayers around you that go, are you crazy, Mackayla? What are you talking about? Recording artists, you know, get off your high horse, right? Well, you know, and so I'm blessed and lucky because from the very beginning I had those people,
Mm-hmm.
and they were very realistic. You know, they weren't like your mother that goes, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I ever heard. And you know what? It's not the most beautiful thing she's ever heard, but she loves you. And so she's going to say that, right? Well, I had good people around me that said, you know, uh, I mean, look, I had a guy in the very beginning and I met him, and I don't believe in accidents because now I'm old and I've had this happen so many times. It's like the laws of probability, the chances are zero that you
Mm-hmm.
would keep meeting the right people at the right time. I don't, that's seems impossible. But this guy was the first as far as music goes. And his name is Kemper Crab. It's a one of the most talented people, like Sting kind of talented. He's amazing. Well, he produced my first record. And so I was driving from Houston out to Pasadena, Texas, which was about 50 or 60 miles, 50 miles one way or something. And I was driving out there to take voice lessons from his wife. And so I drive out there and then after work and then drive back to my house at night. It was crazy and I was exhausted. Well, we're walking out to my car one night. This is the importance of one conversation and finding that one person in your life who will speak the truth to you, right? He was carrying 3 LPs under his arm. And he goes, we get out to my car and we're going to the studio the next week, by the way. We had scheduled, this was my first album. I did not know anything. We had these great world-class players that were going to be here on Tuesday or whatever. And Kemper looks at me and he goes, hey man, can I ask you a question? He goes, do you think you're doing your best work? I said, Kemper, why are you asking me this now? We're going to the studio on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking me this tonight? And he goes, wait a minute. He goes, I trust you. And if you think you are doing your best work, we're going in Tuesday. But I want to give you these 3 records. And I want you to take them home and listen to them tomorrow. And then I want you to call me and tell me if you think you're doing your best work. Well, I don't want to ask how old you are. You're not supposed to ask a woman how old they are. But you know what? You don't know who I'm going to say here, but it's going to, if you knew, you would see what a dirty trick this was. Okay. He sends me home with the first 2 Dan Fogelberg records and a Leonard Cohen record. So he sends me home with Netherlands, Souvenirs, both by Dan Fogelberg, both classics, both stupid great. Okay. And I mean, the bar is up here, right? And he sent me home with the Leonard Cohen record. It's called Songs of Love and Hate. And I listened to those records the next day. I cried. I broke down and sobbed. And I called him and I said, Kemper, you know what? This was a dirty trick, brother. I want you to know that. I said, but you're making me go back and look at everything I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and rewrote a bunch of stuff, and we recorded that album. It got on radio all over. It was wonderful. So here's what I do, Mackayla. I still send that guy. I still send Kemper every single thing I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell him, I remind him, I say, every time I sit down to write, Kemper, you know what I hear? Hey, Denny, because nobody's ever called me Denny except my grandmother and my 103-year-old author client. And I said, but I remember you saying, Denny, I hear it. You doing your best work? And look, that's what it takes, Mackayla. If you're gonna do great stuff, you need to find those people
Hmm.
and try it. And it may turn out that you're not supposed to be writing songs. You're supposed to be engineering records, or you're supposed to be playing the fiddle, or you're supposed to do something else,
Hmm.
or you're an arranger. Um, but but don't quit. Do it anyway,
Yeah,
basically. That makes sense?
that does make sense. I'm
Yeah.
glad you found somebody who was able to push you on the right path.
Well, me too. Because you know what? Nobody in my family played an instrument. When I wrote my first song, my oldest brother played a little bit of acoustic guitar and he had this big baritone voice. And my brothers were my half brothers. And
Hmm.
so my older brother sang at some gospel conventions and stuff. He was a little bitty guy, had a big voice, but nobody wrote songs and hardly anybody played an instrument. And my dad loved country music, but you know what? But he didn't sing.
Hmm.
And I'm driving home from a date one night and I'm 17 or 18 years old and I write an entire song and I didn't play an instrument either, by the way. And here's another example. So I walk into my job the next day and I'm singing the song because I didn't know you didn't have phones then. There was no
Right.
way to record, right? So I walk in and I sing it all day to myself. Well, at the end of the day, my boss, who always kept his Ovation guitar under his desk, he asked me, he said, "Hey, what is that you're singing? Because it's beautiful."
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, it's a song I wrote driving home last night. It's just weird." Okay. And he goes, "Well, why don't let's sing it together."
Hmm.
He took his guitar out and he played this song and we sang it together. And the hook was set. And he said, "Go out and buy a cheap acoustic guitar, spend $100, don't spend more than $100, and learn some chords and see if you can do this. And if you can't, you can just give the guitar away."
Yeah.
Well, I went out and bought this guitar and I started learning guitar chords. And you know what I heard? I heard songs, I heard stories and lyrics and stuff. And so, um, yeah, I'm grateful for all of it. And all of those people showing up at exactly the moment that they were needed. I
Hmm.
needed them.
Yeah. How does the process differ for you between writing songs and writing a book?
You know what? I don't think it's a fundamental difference, really.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just it's the same muscles, you know. Except you got a lot more words in a book, you know. So you got to kind of really pay a little bit more attention and do more passes through it to
Hmm.
be able to be sure. Is that exactly what you wanted to say there? Have you already talked about that earlier? Because it's this big, right?
Right.
But um, so it's fundamentally the same. Um,
Hmm.
there's a story, there's a message, there's a something you're trying to communicate, and it's you can't settle. You need just the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
it does. And look, you know what? The people that I know, Mackayla, who really excel at this stuff, they've written songs that you've heard on the radio.
Hmm.
Some of them are standards. "I Can't Make You Love Me" for Bonnie Raitt, and "The House That Built Me" from Randall Lambert. All these people, those guys, they work exactly like that. I co-wrote a song one time. It's on the "What Love Makes Us Do" album. I think it's on that album. It's called "Worth My Time," and I co-wrote it with Alan Shamlin, the guy who wrote "I Can't Make You Love Me" for Bonnie Raitt and all these amazing songs. In fact, eventually Adele recorded that song. But um, you know, and he taught me a lot about because he was totally unwilling to settle for something that rhymed or that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be great or nothing. And it was an ordeal for me, because but you know what, it sharpened my sword for the next things I did. And so again, that guy showed up at a time when I really needed it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So do you prefer to co-write your songs or write them yourself?
Well, if I can write it myself, I'd rather.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you the value of, like, I just have been writing some songs with a guy named Michael Peterson, and Michael Peterson was a huge star in the 90s. He had platinum records and all that. And he and I have written two songs that are on this new record, These Three Things and Love Will Never Fail You. Both of those are co-writes with him.
Mm-hmm.
But here's an example of why having a co-writer helps. So he called me one day and he goes, "Hey, I got an idea. What if there's a cocktail party and there's a lot of racket and noise and small talk? Okay. And then somebody mentions her and he smiles. What about that?" I said, "That's a great idea." And I said, "You can make that as mysterious as you want."
Mm-hmm.
So, so we wrote He Smiles. It'll be on the next record. I went to Nashville and I cut what I thought was the final version of the song. I sent it to Michael. He flipped. He goes, "Oh my gosh." What he actually did is he called me on my phone and said, "Okay, hang up because I'm getting ready to FaceTime you." Like, what are you doing? So he FaceTimes me and he's talking, but I can't hear anything. And this goes on for about a minute. And I said, what, do we have a bad connection or something? He goes, "No, this is me being speechless." It's beautiful, right? Well, we both had the song. We had the final, what we thought was a final recording, beautiful, lovely mixed recording. Last Saturday, after weeks of having it, he sends me a text and says, "You know what? That second chorus, it needs to tighten the bolts down just a little bit. That last chorus, it needs to do this." And he put his ideas in there, fabulous ideas, okay, that I never would have thought of. So sometimes, like Strong, I didn't need anybody to help me with that.
Yeah.
That was my problem, okay. But co-writers, the right co-writers, and it's just sort of like editors. Like, I'm in the book business, so you know, a few years ago, Amy Tan, after having a bunch of big books, had a couple that didn't do so well.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever she started getting her sea legs under her again, one of the press asked her, they said, "So what happened back there?" And she said, "Oh, you didn't know?" She goes, "My editor of those big books, she died. You didn't know that?" And she said, "Here's the lesson. Everybody shouldn't be your editor."
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know, they don't connect with you in the way that makes your stuff elevate and sing,
Yeah.
right? And so, everybody thinks they can do it. Well, look, I have a computer here in front of me and a keyboard, so I should be able to edit your stuff. No. And it's the same with co-writers. I think
Mm-hmm.
co-writers, I have a few people I co-write with that I sit down with them and I go, "Together we're better than either of us are separately."
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean you should do it every time.
Right.
So I don't know if I have a preference really, but it's cool when it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it works.
As long as it works. Yep. That's all I'm concerned about.
Before I ask the last question, is there anything else you want to mention or talk about today?
Well, only that if your listeners feel some kind of compulsion to write or produce music or do anything like that, they should totally do it. They should totally do it. And you know what? And they should do it with no intention of anyone ever hearing it except themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they will operate like that, first of all, they'll create better stuff because they won't be trying to hit a moving target out there. Okay.
Yeah.
You get really comfortable in your own skin when you operate like that. And so then when your audience begins to find you, which is what's happening for me, it's the real me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not they're getting whatever they get. And if this is not for you, I'm okay with that. Okay.
Yeah.
But and so what I would hope is that people who are listening to this, the soundtrack of our lives, that if they are feeling those pangs to create like that, whatever it is, that they would do it because it's really good for our souls to do that. And look, let me be clear. AI, there's nothing that AI will ever do that is as great as what you will do. It never will.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what the media and what the press says or anybody else. Nobody has ever been Mackayla. Nobody. And they never will be.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of a kind. And so if you feel those pangs, don't wait on anything. Just go get in a room somewhere and just go get busy. That's what I want to say. So
that's really good advice.
Good. I hope so. Hope it's encouraging.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. So our last question is, what is the soundtrack of your life?
Look, I grew up in a period where music was created by people who couldn't help it. I remember Glenn Frey from the Eagles talking about, there was a period where he and all of those people who became iconic in the 70s, they all lived in the same apartment complex in California. And Glenn Frey had worked with Bob Seger. So he had been around a famous, songwriter. And he said, I learned about songwriting because we lived directly above Jackson Browne. And he said, and here's what Jackson Browne would do. In the morning, I would hear his teapot go off. And then he would get on his piano and he would work on the first verse all morning until noontime. And then his teapot would go off. And he would stop and he would drink his tea and have his lunch. And then he would go back and he would work on it again all afternoon. He goes, you know what? He goes, songwriting is work. And that's how I learned it. And so, you know what those guys were thinking? They weren't thinking about hit records. They weren't thinking about money necessarily. They weren't thinking about being famous even. They were thinking about making something that nobody had ever made before. And so out of that, I grew up around James Taylor and, Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris and all of these people the Eagles and, you name it.
Yeah.
And they all came out of that era of super creativity where the soundtrack of my life is music that doesn't sound like anybody else's music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know it can be done because I've seen it done, and I've seen it, and and so originality is a slippery slope maybe.
Yeah.
Because you go, if I'm too original, nobody's going to play that. Nobody's going to know what to do with this stuff. Well, so what? Right? Are you happy with it? If you're happy with it, then you know what? Then go find your audience because they'll find you. They'll appreciate that you are doing what you do. Because it's kind of a rare thing, I think, now.
Yeah.
there's a lot of tools and stuff that help everybody sort of sound similar. And listen, AI, the problem with AI is that AI goes out and pulls in what people have already done.
Mm-hmm.
It learns from what's already been done. So you know what? So it's by definition, it's derivative.
Yep.
So don't let that decide your music for you. Go do what you do. And you know what? If nobody's ever done it before and only you and God hear it, it's cool. Did I answer your question?
That did, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So for all of our listeners who want to stay updated on you, hear your old music, hear your new music, maybe see you live, where can they find you?
They can come to my website, although it needs help. They can come to DennisWelchMusic.com. They can find me on Facebook, the Dennis Welch Music on there, my music page. And then they can find my music. That's what's really cool. And I'm just going to tell you, a lot of my older musician friends complain about, oh my God, we don't sell records anymore and all that. But here's what I think. My record company, when we finish these recordings, Mackayla, you know what he does? That record company pushes one button and that music is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want your music to make a difference, this is a whale of a time to be making records and making music.
Yeah.
And there may be less money for us writers and stuff because of the way things are structured. And I don't think that's necessarily fair.
No.
But you know what? But if your goal is to have your music get out in the world and make a difference, come on. I mean, and so the answer to your question is Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, everywhere. You can
Mhm.
find my stuff everywhere now, and that's a very cool thing.
It is pretty cool. It's like there's so much music out there. It's almost
Yeah.
overwhelming.
It is overwhelming, and it's easier to make music and record it than ever.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? But it's still not easy to make original music that is with integrity.
Yeah.
That's still difficult, and it should be difficult. It's the reason we appreciate Rembrandt and Van Gogh is because those guys. I mean, Van Gogh was starving.
Yeah.
He didn't care. Starry Night here on my wall back here. That's not the original, of course. But you know what? But he had to paint that,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard, and so it shouldn't be as easy as it is probably, because it probably allows people in who are only marginally attached to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not one of those.
I can tell.
Yeah, I'm not. So anyway, thank you for having me on, Mackayla. Very
Of
insightful.
course. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
You're most welcome, and I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah,
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
so
rest
much.
of your day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Too long I've been fearing the shadows and running from the wind and feeling like I'm bound to lose again. I wanna be strong, I wanna feel invincible. For once in my life, I wanna